Today, I will share with you an astonishing truth about the famous series Squid Game. Did you know that the show we all watched isn't purely fictional? It is actually inspired by a real story that truly happened. Yes, what you're about to hear today is the testimony of someone who experienced this firsthand in South Korea some time ago. Their experience closely mirrors what we saw in the series, with horrifying details that were never shown on screen. This person, who lived through these events, will unveil shocking and painful truths about the dark side of the story. So, let us dive into the depths of reality and uncover the secret that was hidden from everyone. Let's begin. On a cold night in the outskirts of Seoul, Jung, a 10-year-old boy, wandered the crowded streets alone. He had no home to shelter him and no family to care for him. Since losing his mother to illness 2 years ago, he had been forced to live in alleyways, surviving on scraps of food scavenged from trash bins or offered by kind strangers. The city was a vast, unknown world to him. The noise of cars, the shouts of street vendors, and the glaring neon lights meant nothing but a whirlwind of motion, a place devoid of warmth or safety. That night, Jung sat beneath a crumbling bridge, trying to light scraps of paper to keep himself warm. He wore an old coat that barely covered his frail body. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching. He jumped up, expecting the police to chase him away as they often did. But it wasn't an officer who appeared before him. It was a girl about his age, named Lee. Her clothes were tattered, her hair tangled, and she carried her younger brother in her arms, a boy who looked as though he hadn't eaten in days. She looked at Jung with fear, but he saw in her eyes the same suffering he felt. In a faint voice, she asked, "Do you have any food? My little brother needs something to eat." Jung glanced at her, then at the small piece of bread he had hidden in his pocket. Despite his own hunger, he couldn't ignore her need. He took out the bread and handed it to her. She smiled kindly and said, "Thank you. My name is Lee, and this is my little brother, Jung." From that night onward, Lee and her brother became a part of Jung's life. They met under the same bridge every evening, trying to survive together. Lee was clever and brave, always thinking of ways to find food without putting them in danger. Jung, though small, was strong and protected them from the threats of street life. As time went on, the three of them became like a little family, relying on one another. Despite their harsh circumstances, there were fleeting moments of joy. A simple game played with stones or a story Lee told about her happy days before losing her parents in a car accident. But the safety they found together didn't last long. One night, as they sat talking under the bridge, a black truck appeared out of nowhere. A group of men in police uniforms got out, but their demeanor was far from helpful. One of the men shouted harshly, "You kids, come with us. This is no place for children." Lee clung tightly to Jung and her brother, but a rough hand yanked her away. Jung began to cry, while Jung fought valiantly to protect them. But his small frame was no match for the men's strength. They were forced into the truck, where they found other children their age, terrified and clueless about their destination. The truck sped off, leaving behind the city they knew. Jung tried to comfort Lee and her brother, but fear gnawed at his heart. The men's cold gazes and gruff voices didn't bode well. "Lee, don't worry. I'm here. I won't leave you or Jung," Jung whispered to her, though he wasn't sure if he could keep that promise. That moment marked the beginning of a new, darker journey filled with dangers. The trio would soon discover that life on the streets was far kinder than what awaited them in the days to come. The truck was shrouded in darkness, carrying Jung, Lee, her younger brother Jung, and a group of other frightened children. There was no sound except for scattered whispers and muffled sobs. Inside the truck, the air was suffocating, and anxiety gripped everyone. Jung sat close to Lee, trying to comfort her as she clutched her little brother tightly, as if fearing he would be taken from her. He whispered to her, "Don't be afraid, Lee. We'll find a way out of this." But his words weren't enough to ease her troubled heart. She looked at him with tear-filled eyes and asked, "Where are they taking us? What are they going to do to us?" Jung had no answer. The truth was, he didn't know either. After hours of traveling, the truck finally came to a halt. The doors were flung open forcefully, and light suddenly poured in, making the weary children blink their tired eyes. Men stood at the door, ordering everyone to get out. The place was an abandoned warehouse, far removed from the city. The ground was dusty, the walls crumbling, and the air cold and harsh. The children were lined up in rows while the men patrolled among them with stern looks. A tall man, seemingly the leader of the group, stepped forward and addressed the children in a loud voice. "Listen carefully. From now on, you belong to us. You will work for us, and if anyone tries to escape, their fate will be worse than you can imagine." His words struck their hearts like a whip, filling them with terror. Jung quickly understood that these men were a gang exploiting children for illegal activities. The children were divided into small groups. Jung was taken to a separate room with Lee, Young, and 4 other children. Inside, 2 men holding ledgers began recording the children's names and details. When it was Jung's turn, one of them asked, "What's your name?" Jung answered steadily despite his fear, "Jung." The man then pointed to Lee and asked her the same question, but she hesitated. Jung quickly intervened. "Her name is Lee, and this is her brother, Young." The man eyed Jung suspiciously but said nothing and continued writing. After the registration was complete, the children were assigned to work. The tasks were grueling and dangerous. Some were forced to carry heavy boxes, while others were given mysterious jobs like sorting chemicals or packing unknown substances. As days passed, Jung realized they had to escape. The conditions were unbearable. Food was scarce, and the gang did not hesitate to punish any child who made a mistake or disobeyed orders. One night, while everyone was asleep in their assigned room, Jung sat with Lee and whispered, "Lee, we can't stay here. We have to escape. If we stay, we won't survive." Lee looked at him fearfully and said, "But how? The place is surrounded by guards, and there are cameras everywhere." Jung replied, "We'll watch their every move. We'll look for a weakness, any opportunity." During the day, Jung and Lee observed the place carefully. They noticed that a truck arrived every week to deliver supplies. The truck would stop at the main gate, where the boxes were unloaded, and the gate would remain open for a short time. Jung knew this was their only chance. But the plan required courage and precise execution, especially with Jung, who wouldn't be able to run or endure a long escape. Jung told the other children in their room about his plan. Some were hesitant and scared, but others expressed their willingness to join. "If we don't try now, we may never get another chance," Jung said firmly, trying to ignite hope in their hearts. On the night the truck arrived, the children were ready. They had feigned obedience in the preceding days to avoid suspicion. When the moment came, they had to move quickly and silently. But would their plan succeed? Or would the guards catch them before they could escape? The darkness engulfed the place, the air cold and unusually chilling, as if the atmosphere mirrored the anxiety consuming the children's hearts. They stood in a corner of the room, hidden in the shadows, their eyes watching every movement outside. Jung and Lee stood at the front of the group, sensing the moment they would have to act. "The decisive moment is coming," Jung whispered to Lee. Her eyes were filled with tension, but his words offered her a glimmer of hope. The truck approached, its engine echoing through the abandoned warehouse. The bright headlights illuminated the front of the area, while the rest was swallowed by darkness. The driver stopped the truck at the gate, just as he did every week. "The time has come," Jung said softly, his excitement barely contained. At that moment, as the gate began to open to allow the truck to unload, the children moved toward the exit. Jung, Lee, Young, and the rest of the group ran silently toward the shadows, trying to remain unseen. They needed to hide quickly behind the stacks of boxes and debris scattered in the corners. They managed to reach the far corner near the gate, where they could see the guards standing by the main entrance. It was a critical moment. Any misstep could reveal their location and put them in danger. We have to wait, Jung whispered. If we run now, we'll expose ourselves. Every minute felt like an hour as the lights outside shifted constantly. The group watched the guards' movements intently. Lee, however, grew increasingly worried about her younger brother, Jung, who looked exhausted and struggled to keep up. Jung, I can't, Lee said, tears welling in her eyes. He can't run like we can. Jung replied firmly, we'll carry him if we have to. But we must get out of here. Long minutes passed before the guards' attention was drawn to another part of the warehouse. It was a crucial moment, the eternal seconds slipping away. Jung signaled everyone to move quickly. The opportunity had come. They ran toward the back door, where a small gap in the iron fence provided an escape route. It would take only a few seconds to reach it, but they had to move stealthily and silently. As they neared the fence, Jung felt something unusual. One of the guards was glancing in their direction. Fortunately, the angles and lighting helped conceal them. Now's the time, Jung whispered to his friends. Nimbly, they slipped through the gap in the fence, disappearing into the dark streets waiting beyond. Once outside, they ran as fast as they could, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the warehouse, escaping the nightmare they had endured. The farther they ran, the faster their pace became. The ground was muddy, and the streets deserted, but fear still chased them. Jung planned every step carefully, knowing they needed to find a safe shelter, a place hidden from the gang's eyes. The children began to feel a small sense of relief. The darkness surrounded them, but to them, it symbolized hope, freedom from the nightmare they had been living. Lee now carried Jung in her arms to help him move faster. But then, out of nowhere, a voice boomed from behind them. Where are you? It was one of the guards. They quickened their pace, but it was clear the gang would soon realize their escape. We need to hide, Jung said in a trembling voice. This way. They ducked into narrow alleys between abandoned houses, hiding among the old ruins in a desperate attempt to evade the pursuers drawing nearer. As they crouched in the shadows, their hearts pounded with fear. Would they succeed in their escape? Would the gang find them? Could they reach a safe haven before being dragged back to their prison? The situation was uncertain, and time was racing against them. But they had made their choice. Escape or die trying. As time passed, Jung's heart began to race, and their footsteps quickened in the narrow alleys. The deserted streets surrounded them from all sides, and the darkness grew heavier as they moved farther away from the area where they had been hiding. Their goal was to reach a safe place, but it was anything but easy. Do you think we can really escape? Lee whispered, trying to steady herself, though fear was evident in her voice. We're not there yet, but we won't give up, Jung replied, his voice filled with determination. We're close to surviving. We just have to prove our will is stronger than our fear. Jung was exhausted, his pale face showing how drained he was from running. Lee carried him in her arms, but his weight was beginning to take its toll, causing her to slow down. I need some time to rest, Lee said, her voice tired. They stopped for a moment in the narrow alley, trying to catch their breath and collect their thoughts. The situation was dire. Every moment was critical, and every decision could mean the difference between life and death. I have an idea, Jung said quietly. We need to reach the old train station. There's a hidden path underground we can use to escape through the tunnels. But Lee hesitated. Are we sure this is the right way? Jung responded quickly, there's no time to double-check. We have to move now. Without wasting another second, they headed toward the station, taking advantage of the enveloping darkness. The streets were utterly empty, with only faint light emanating from the windows of a few abandoned buildings. Everything in the city seemed deserted, as though life had come to a complete halt. As they neared the train station, they felt exposed, as though they were in the sights of the guards chasing them. The sound of heavy footsteps on the ground quickened behind them, making them realize time was running out. We need to close the gap between us and them, Jung urged, picking up his pace toward the entrance to the tunnels. As they entered the station, the sound of footsteps grew louder and closer. They were almost out of time and needed to disappear immediately. In a fleeting glance, they spotted the entrance to the tunnels. The old doors concealing the underground passages were ajar, but they had no choice but to take the risk. "Come on, quickly," Jung said as he struggled to open the door. "Hurry. This is our only chance." They rushed into the dark, narrow passage that stretched out before them. The tunnels had no lighting, but they knew the path well. The air was stifling, heavy with tension. "We have to be careful now," Jung said, leading the group through the maze of tunnels. It was hard to breathe, and the darkness was oppressive. They moved cautiously, each step deliberate. The tunnels were so narrow they could barely walk side by side. Their footsteps echoed in the corridors, amplifying the pressure and fear with every passing second. As they delved deeper, anxiety about being discovered grew. Everything depended on their speed and ability to remain hidden. "If they find us here, it's over," Lee said in a low voice, her tone laced with caution. While navigating the depths of the tunnels, they began to hear sounds from above. The guards' footsteps echoed above them, uncomfortably close. They knew the Mafia wouldn't rest until they were found. "We need to stay here for a while," Jung said, identifying a short-term safe spot. "If they reach this area, we'll be in serious trouble." Time crawled as they waited, their anxiety intensifying. Each step in the tunnels felt like a true test, with every moment bringing a mixture of hope and dread. "Will this nightmare ever end?" Lee asked, her voice trembling as tears welled in her eyes. "Will we really escape?" Jung didn't answer immediately. The response required patience, but deep down, he knew their chance, however slim, was real. Suddenly, they felt movement above them. The footsteps were closing in, and shadows danced in the direction of their hiding spot. "They're here," Jung whispered anxiously. "We need to move now." They ran faster through the tunnels, trying to minimize noise and control their breathing. They knew every second could be critical. As they neared the final exit, hope began to shine in their eyes. But they also knew the biggest challenge might still lie ahead, and their fate remained uncertain until the very last moment.